Look at these guys.
Thinking about people walking this way, they're going to be passengers.
Yeah, these people. 1-1. Nice. Nice. What can we dim? Can we dim these more?
Yep.
Can we turn off those back?
We have 1 minute and they're going to be starting line.
Okay.
So which one pointed?
What can we do? So can we turn off those back there? Or do you need them for backlighting?
It does not going to be effective, but I can do
And can we dim these?
Yes.
Okay. Let's try it.
Okay.
It's better. Yeah, go stand by that fan for a while. That's what I did. Yeah. Hi, Leslie.
Hello. Are you okay with us having water in here?
Yeah. Yeah, it's, Alexi asked me about water. And I told him it's a fast day, starting at 9 something. But as always, those that need water should have it. Yeah, always.
It's about the same height as the chair.
This is, I don't know how you get up once you get in this chair. You just stay here. You just stay here. Roll.
You make sure you can reach far enough to grab somebody else. And you mutually pull each other up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
We went and had a little Shabbat meal with our Chabad friends down the hall, and I sat for about an hour and a half in a chair this height with no back, a stool, with no back, with a child on my
Lap?
Lap.
Oh, so your legs went
playing
down and your
games,
knees
and
didn't
I'm
work
like,
anymore.
yeah.
That's fantastic.
Hey, Cheryl, this is the person I said I thought would be here. She's here. How are you? It's great to see you. Live and in person, and all sorts of things.
Hey. Cheryl and Gary. I would stand up, but I might not be able to get back in this little chair. This feels like
Life-size chairs.
we're in Gan Chova. Gan Chova po.
Thank you.
Gan Chova. This is kindergarten. I think we can do some up on the stender too.
Rabbi, is your family still here?
No, they left. I mean, they're still here, but they're preparing to leave.
Ah,
So they'll be flying.
tonight, or?
Yeah, they're flying tonight. Nadav, our middle and Kiwi's camp ends tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
So Sharon has to go to LA to pick her up and then drop off one other one. And drop off Nadav for camp.
Oh, they're switching. Got it.
Different
Nadav's
camps.
hair turned out great.
His blue hair.
Yeah. It looks pretty great.
His mom gave him such a hard time. Not because of the color, she doesn't care.
Yeah.
But she's just like, why are you doing it in the salon? I'll just do it at home. But we've done that many times, but it never works. It always works sort of, you know. So,
Maybe that's
so
why.
he really asked me, can we just do it once in the thing? So I said, yeah. And then she tried to talk him out of it. So he dyed his hair blonde, just
Right.
like platinum blonde. But he had some purple in it from before. So instead of being blonde, it was all blonde, and there was a streak of pink, like right here. And then he didn't like it.
Didn't even see it.
No, you didn't. It was only in the shop, and then he didn't like that
Oh,
pink.
in the shop, got
So
it.
then he's like, can we do something to cover that up? And then they went with this blue thing. I don't know. So he was happy about it. Yeah, he was happy.
That looks good.
Yeah.
Parent children, those were the days.
Yeah.
You know, hair grows out. It's
It
not
does.
a piercing. It's not a tattoo. It's
Yep.
right. It's now you can cut it. It'll come back.
temporary.
Right. It's fine.
Yep. And if you don't like it, they'll just put another color right over the top of it.
Yeah. My youngest was pretty blonde most of his life until about a year ago.
Oh.
And his hair started to turn brown. Mine did the same thing, but around age 20 or so.
Oh, okay.
So he didn't like it. He didn't like the brown. Like he had an image of himself as this blonde-haired surfer kid, and this brown hair wasn't doing it. Right? It wasn't doing it. So.
Cheryl, the other day we were talking about who might be here. I was like, I think Cheryl will be here. I remember Cheryl being, and look, I was like, there she is. It was a small list of people that we thought, and I said, I really think Cheryl's gonna be here.
Now I'm really glad I came. I was considering just watching.
Of course, yeah. No, it wasn't, we were just brainstorming, because it was kind of such a short notice.
And it's been such a long time. Tell me your name.
Leslie,
Leslie.
yeah, I work in the office.
Yeah, I know. I know you work in the office.
No.
No,
Well,
it's,
they
no,
look good.
But they look.
no, it's
They
totally
look
fine.
good. Morris, you know Morris?
It's because I
More
used to
sign.
see you every Friday for
Marita.
Rabbi, or not every other
If you're
Friday for Rabbi
Ashkenazi,
study and
Morris, Morris
a
sign,
couple
yes,
other
Morris.
event
friend
like
Morris.
this, off services sort of thing.
It will be difficult.
And I just
because
felt
it's
like
a
this
bit dark,
is,
so
I said
It's
Aunt
not
Paul,
enough light.
this is
I'll
her
have them turn
thing,
some
I
back
think
on. I don't even know
Cheryl,
if it'll help.
and I listed a few other people. And
just for the,
it's
for
like,
chanting.
yeah, I was
the
actually right on.
People who we expect to show up are New York people.
Perhaps, yeah, but,
Well, Harvey and Jackie,
yeah, and I think, I thought maybe.
they're just granola flavor.
I was reading through this one for Shachri, and
No,
then
I
reading through
thought,
another Siddur for
Lenny
Shachri,
Rand
Tisha
might
B'Av.
be here.
There's a lot of minhagim.
Yeah,
A
that's
lot,
true.
like people adding
Yeah,
all
true.
kinds of stuff.
I thought maybe Lenny Rand might be here. He just kind of seemed like his cup of tea. And we've come in the past, but we wanted to support,
This is where I come when something's going on and I want to really do it.
All right. Be really good.
And I don't know if Rabbi is starting his Torah Fridays, every Friday, starting this coming Friday, the 23rd. So, but it's gonna be in the bride's room instead of his office. Just because I know you enjoyed coming to that, I thought they announced it today in services, so. Anyway, it's always an open door.
Oh, well, thank you. I was thinking I was going to come to that, but I was also thinking I might wait a little while so I can, have a good transition.
Of
before we
course.
Start. Not, bring low expectations on people who don't deserve to have that, happen to them.
Well, there were probably about 40 people here this morning, which was good.
Slowly, right, people will,
Yeah, it's
We're
like as
returning to
people feel
shul.
comfortable and
it's nice.
the summer's a little challenging with, people traveling,
Always,
if they're gonna
always.
travel.
Or staycations or whatever, right?
The microphone was like right
Okay.
down, so.
I have to give it to him to sing away from the microphone.
It's like being at a dinner party and the flowers are right in the middle.
Yeah,
Like
gotta
doing
move
this.
that. Yeah, these are a little bit in the middle.
I see you found the books.
I didn't, but someone did. I didn't know what I was looking for. I was
Oh.
looking for like a small booklet or something.
That's a
Not
whole
a-
shebang here.
Not a whole Megillah. This
Keynote, I mean, keynote is just,
so
Or
many,
5 of them. No,
Yeah.
not 5. Not all 5.
so
and then
many.
for all the Polte Shacharit, I mean, next day also is here.
I know.
Big ch-
Everything. Mincha's here too.
This is the,
The usual prayer book.
No, this is
This is
This
just
is
for
for
Tisha
Tisha.
B'Av.
Yeah.
Orthodox.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's
Not
Koren.
unusual.
I actually
They
have,
have very good Sidurim. I mean,
Yeah.
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 In many places, they, instead of doing either the conservatives or this, they just go to this, which is sort of,
Yeah. If you can function in Hebrew, it's better,
yeah.
right?
I don't know how the
It's about
English,
if you can
Siddur
use.
Lev Shalem.
I don't know how the English translation here.
I don't
No
know.
idea.
I'm a little ignorant sometimes about the English. So we can start Mariv in about an hour.
Okay.
An hour, when Shabbos is over. But we can do a few things, so we thought we would sing a little. And then I brought some text for us to learn a little bit. And then we'll see how much time we have, so we might sing a little more and then move into Mariv and conclude with Eicha a little bit later. So Chazan, I think, is going to teach us, Cantor, a few.
And do we
Thanks.
do Havdalah in there somewhere? Is that part of?
After.
We
yeah.
do, we don't have any Esh.
Mm.
We do only for the flame tonight. We don't do, because we're going into a day of mourning, we don't do the other joyful parts, the besamim and the wine. We don't do those two, just we're at Esh. But if when we get to Mariv, you'll see the first line. And this is the same on every Shabbat. At the end of every Shabbat, one in Mariv says a paragraph that has Havdalah in it. So sometimes my kids would ask me, like, how can we light a fire? You know, that's like a catch-22. It's still
Yeah,
Shabbat,
yeah.
but then I need a fire, so I can light a fire, because in Mariv I've already said Havdalah. But really, all one needs to do is to say Hamavdil ben Kodesh
Yeah.
L'chol, and that's it. That's all you gotta do. Just that line, and then you've freed yourself, and now you can start doing whole things again. And that's right at the beginning of Mariv in here. So
Yeah, it's actually here, the end of the Mariv.
it's in there.
Yeah, here it says
Or
Moraesh,
Esh,
but I
yeah.
think the Luach actually said that you just have to say Mavdil ben Kodesh L'chol.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, okay. So, I think some of you came to my house for singing, right? Yeah. So, because I thought that I had to teach it, but I think you are already
I'll learn.
already know, so we can just sing it. I thought to sing first Mima'amakim. Mima'amakim means from the depth. And of course, that's where we're going to go. That's where we're going to
Can see
go
that
for Tisha B'Av. We are going to go to the depth. That's where we are going to. But we.
Sharon, you
Uh-huh.
brought your own. You're not in kindergarten. Welcome.
You're prepared?
Welcome. Sharon, can you move my things if you like?
Do you know Sharon?
So, we're going to sing first. and we're going to sing Mima'amakim. So the words are Mima'amakim, Kiraticha Hashem, I call you from the depth. And then the second line is Adonai Hashem, Shim'a B'Koli, please hear me. That's all the. So it goes like this: Mima'amakim, Mima'amakim, Kiraticha Hashem, Mima'amakim, Mima'amakim. And then to end this, Kiraticha Hashem. Okay, from the beginning. Mima'amakim, Mima'amakim, Kiraticha Hashem, Mima'amakim, Mima'amakim, Kiraticha Hashem. One more time. Mima'amakim, Mima'amakim, Kiraticha Hashem, Mima'amakim, Mima'amakim, Kiraticha Hashem. Now second line. Adonai Shema. Try. Adonai Shema. Shema B'Koli. Adonai Shema. Now the ending. Shema B'Koli. Okay, this portion. Adonai Shema, Shema B'Koli. Adonai Shema, Shema B'Koli. Mima'amakim, Mima'amakim, Kiraticha Hashem. Mima'amakim, Mima'amakim, Kiraticha Hashem. Mima'amakim, Mima'amakim, Kiraticha Hashem. Mima'amakim, Mima'amakim, Kiraticha Hashem. Adonai Shema, Shema B'Koli. Adonai Shema, Shema B'Koli. Adonai Shema, Shema B'Koli. Adonai Shema, Shema B'Koli. Shema B'Koli. ממעמקים, ממעמקים, קראתיך השם, ממעמקים, ממעמקים, קראתיך השם. ממעמקים, ממעמקים, קראתיך השם, ממעמקים, ממעמקים, קראתיך השם. Adonai Shema, Shema B'Kuli, Adonai Shema, Shema B'Kuli, Adonai Shema, Shema B'Koli, Adonai Shema, Shema B'Koli, Shema B'Koli.
Did anyone grow up doing Tisha B'Av? What was a thing you did? Camp? I always feel for those campers. Every summer in Camp Ramah, we would have those kids, and about a tenth of them, maybe less, would really kind of get into it and like, try to find a way, and the rest were just wondering why they weren't eating all day, right? Anyone else? No? At Camp Ramah, which one? At Palmer. At Palmer, my son's leaving tomorrow for Ramah, Ojai in California. In the ghetto. Yeah. It's part of a museum now, that shul. That's the one that has these windows, and they would actually move candlelight into the window on Friday night to tell you if it was okay to come to shul on Shabbat morning in that little courtyard in the ghetto. You never knew whether you could or you couldn't. I always struggled with Eicha, always, and Tisha B'Av, because when we read the text that we're about to read a little later, it's, I think about how lucky I am. It describes a Jerusalem that doesn't match anything that I know, right? So my daughter's in Jerusalem today. I guess it's her tomorrow already, I guess. But when you see a big, thriving city and the beautiful new light rail train that runs through the middle of town, and it's hard to say the whole city is destroyed and mothers are forced to eat their children at this, at the gates to the old city. It's hard. It's hard for me to do that. I actually had never seen this book before. 2 days ago or something, I'd never seen this one. And in it, the Rav Soloveitchik, he it was I don't know if you've read the beginning, the introduction, but he describes being in Jerusalem in 1967 after the Yom Kippur War, the Six-Day War, and Tisha B'Av comes, and they're there, the Rab's there with his students, and then everybody's celebrating, because now they have the holy cities, and it's Tisha B'Av, and they asked him, how are we going to celebrate when we're supposed to be in this place of a depth of pain and all that? How are we going to do it? And according to this, at least, he didn't answer them for a year. He waited a year to the following Tisha B'Av, and then he answered them. And he answered in three ways. He said, it's not that we're mourning a temple that wasn't built, that hasn't been standing for 2,000 years. It's that we didn't build it in this last year. Like in this year, we didn't build it, so it's not something that's very far away. And then he said, what about when the second temple stood? Did they have Tisha B'Av for the first temple? Right, the first one was destroyed. That's the one that we're going to write in 586. But now we have a second one, and so we have it, and we're remembering the one that's broken. So is it possible that the priests could have done their work and offered the sacrifices and welcomed people into the Azara, into the courtyard and all that, and still had Tisha B'Av? And they said yes. But they didn't do it like us. They had prayers that they added to remember the first Churban Habayit. So just like we have words of prayer, they had words of prayer for a really long time. And then the third one, let's see. That's right in there. I could just turn 5 pages. I don't remember the third one. Hold on. Let me see. I have a cheat sheet. I just found it a fascinating idea to think about being in Israel in 1967, and then Tisha B'Av comes. So he said the first answer, the second answer, the third answer. He talked about all the calamities beyond the 2 temples that fell. So you know that somehow, magically or less magically, the rabbis had managed to put every calamity fell on Tisha B'Av, almost all of them. So I brought us just a couple texts to look at. It's going to stay there, I know it is. These are 2 of the core texts that say why Yeah, we kind of both tried to not get up. So the first one's the Talmud Bavli, Masechet Yoma, on 9b. Yoma is the day. Yom is day. That A on the end is Aramaic for Ha, so the day, which is Yom Kippur. And in this Masechet, so the Talmud, 6th century rabbinic discourse about what our law books mean, what the Mishnah means, and at the heart of it, what does the Torah mean. And they asked this question, Mikdash Rishon bipnei Macherev, why was the first sanctuary destroyed? So why was the first sanctuary destroyed? 586 BCE. Why was it destroyed? No, why was it really destroyed? Because there was an Assyrian army that came that was very giant, and Jerusalem happens to be on this King's Highway, this road that gets you from the east to the west, or at least to Egypt. And for thousands of years, people have fought over this little piece of land. Whoever gets it gets to collect taxes, and it's a decent business route, and all these kind of things. But the Assyrian army was the largest army at the time, and they kind of came through and took over, right? Occasionally this happened in our history. And the rabbis know that is what happened, but that's not enough, right, to say that there was a big army, because we have God on our side. And so God couldn't have let just a big army. It had to be something else. So why was the first sanctuary destroyed? he says, מפני שלושה דברים שהיו בו, עבודה זרה, גילוי עריות ושפיכת דמים. So these were the three reasons. These are them. What was so bad, what was so terrible that God said, yeah, let it be destroyed, or God used the Assyrians as a vessel to clean up the city, or God said, Fuya to the Jewish people. Whatever he did, whatever this happened, so these were them, idolatry, adultery, and bloodshed. Anybody care to take a crack at those three? These are the worst thing ever. You don't need the temple anymore. You lose it because of these three.
Use the things that, you're absolutely not to do under any circumstances, even if it's your life.
Yeah, there's three mitzvahs that, because the Torah says, chai bahem, that we shall live with these mitzvot. That means I'm not supposed to die in them, except for three, which are adultery, avodah zarah, and shfichat damim. That's right. So the three worst sins, right? The three that you have, like these are the ones that. So the idea of like what happens if somebody were to tell me to shoot someone, and then point a gun at me and say, if you don't shoot, then you're going to get shot. I'm supposed to let myself be shot. Like that's that one. Right? So that's kind of them, and they were transgressing even those, right? So what does that tell you? If it takes the three at the end of the poll, these are the worst of the worst, or these are the ones you have to make sure that we're at least holding on to these three, and if you can't do those three, then
Lesser sins must have just been trivial at the time.
I mean, right, we're not going to talk about shotness or something, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know how to think about that. Like, is it God saying, well, what good is the work of the priest going to do, right, if you can't even do, like, if you've let so much slide, then, right, then what does it matter if you have a temple or not? What does that matter, right? What does that matter? So, any other thoughts on that?
I could be completely wrong, but it's where my head is. Aren't these three of the Ten Commandments? These are three that you would break if you, right? Idolatry, you shall not.
Right, so Leslie's right to point out that they, we can read them off, so I can't see that high. Point out that they made the Big Ten, right? I mean, these are, in many ways, that they're like that. By the way, all these are public in some way, too, these three mitzvot. So it's not just idolatry, like did I worship Zeus or something, I don't know. It's that I did so in public in front of people, and I called out that Zeus is the thing, and I was warned, and I knew what I was doing. There was a whole bunch of steps to all of that. And so these are them, right? That these were the three worst things ever, and that's where the first Mikdash fell.
Do you think that this is accurate?
What do you mean by accurate?
I mean, do you really think that such a person?
It's for the, so because we live in our world now with COVID, and why we're sitting here on the bima, one could ask, why aren't we sitting somewhere else, is there's a balance that there's like a tightrope a bit that we're walking, that we've included people through our camera over there for 15 months, and many people that have found it very meaningful that could never come to shul but are participating in shul, and some folks still aren't comfortable actually just interacting, right? For whatever reasons, they're not. And so we're in a place where it's all set on timers and all that kind of stuff, but that turns on. So someone could hear, and they won't hear you unless you have that.
Facebook Live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I wonder is what's the percentage? You know, and I'm thinking about Sodom, and how many were not doing this, and And did the rabbis really need to assign this kind of horrible blame to why was the temple destroyed?
Right, so Sharon brings us to Sodom and Gomorrah, where there's ethical conversation between God and Abraham, where Abraham learns that the city will be destroyed, and then there's some kind of Middle East negotiation that happens, right? He's like, but what if there's this many righteous people? What if this many righteous people? What if this many righteous people? All the way down to just 10. What if there are 10 people that aren't doing these 3 terrible things? Like, how can you destroy the innocent with the wicked? How can you do that? That seems unethical. I always find that conversation in Sodom and Gomorrah funny, because clearly God knows who's in the city, but he still plays along with the game, or she plays along with the game. By the way, if I call God he, I speak 2 languages, Hebrew and English. So in Hebrew it's feminine, and in English it's masculine, so
Mush it up.
that's my way to mush it up, yeah. Right? So you're saying, well, what about this? It's not possible that everybody's doing all of this stuff. And so what percentage tips us over the edge that it's so bad that that it could be destroyed? Is this really what was happening? Or is it some kind of values teaching by the rabbis to say, I'm not going to tell you everything that was happening, but since these 3 you know, all the more so, Daniel did a kal v'chomer argument that, right, if these were them, of course there were millions of little ones that were going on all the time. But why was it destroyed? Because the Assyrians came, and they were a very big army, right? And we couldn't defend ourselves against that army. They were the largest army in the world at the time. And they wanted the city, and they took it. But our rabbis don't say that. They say, no. It can't be practical like an army came. It has to be something else, right? It can't be that the world just happens to us, and we have no say, no control. We must have done something. Right? There must be something, because if we've done something back there, then I can fix it, right? Then I can do something in the future in order to avoid it. Otherwise, it's, what would you say? It's like
Random.
hopeless, helpless. It's random. By the way, Eicha, the thing that I've learned to hear in Eicha, in the trope when we get there, is helplessness. There's a real helplessness that the world is happening. Just before I walked over, my middle child is in camp. This is her last day at camp, but she's a sports fan, and she called me, and I answer if it's my kids on Shabbat, so I answered. I don't know what she's calling about, and she told me there was a shooting at the Washington Nationals and San Diego Padres game, because we're outside the stadium, right? I don't think she knew everything, but she just knew the Padres were playing, so she's always checking the Padres, and then said there's some shooting, and they shut down the game and postponed it and whatever, right? But there's a way when we start to think about some things that happen in our world that they can just feel random and chaotic and overwhelming and helpless. Like, what do I do in the midst of all of that? All right, so that's the first temple. But by the second temple, we weren't doing those things anymore. Like, yay us, right? We got better, and we weren't doing those things. And then they ask, Aval Mikdash Sheni. Like, the first one was destroyed for that. What about the second one? Right? Because in the second one, Shehayu Askin b'Torah u'b'mitzvot gemilut chasidim mipnei ma cherev. Because in the second one, our people were busying themselves with the Torah and with mitzvahs and with deeds of loving kindness, of acts of goodness. So how come that one got destroyed? Right? We were no longer, we were into the mitzvahs by that time, like even the little one, right, we were doing them. And then, but this temple still falls, and they say, why? Why does it say? It says, mipnei shehaita bo sinat chinam. So, because, what does it say in the English? Because therein prevailed hatred without cause. How do you translate sinat chinam? So sinah is hatred, and chinam is free. What do you say? Like, how do you say it? It's without any
Ungrounded.
ungrounded hatred. Its basis hatred is, Yeah, that's probably the same thing, right? Basis, Satan, ungrounded hatred. And so what's it talking about? What prevailed hatred? What was the hatred like this ungrounded hatred?
Historically? Or
For the rabbis here.
rabbis? Because historically, it was one political party against another, and we brought in Romans and Assyrians and everybody else to fight our internal squabbles.
So the second temple in 70, right?
Right here.
The second temple in 70 AD, that one, both of them were traumatic to the Jewish people. Both of them, obviously traumatic, changed the way that we lived and worshipped and all of that. But ultimately led to a giant question, like, does God still love us? Like when we say Birkat Hamazon, we say like that house that he dwells in, right? Like we built a mikdash, we built a temple, God lives in the house, and if you knock down the house, then what happens to God? Right? There's a big kind of question. Are we divorced? Are we separated? What are we? Like do we have anything left between us? Like what's going on? And the rabbi said, yes, of course, and we have a new way to be connected. And after the first destruction of the temple, we get all of our mystical Merkavah literature, like the prophet Ezekiel, which has God always as an image of a chariot with kind of a cubish thing with a face on all sides. It's something that looks everywhere, is everywhere, can move anywhere. It's not spaced in a house anymore. It's a wheel within a wheel. So this one, Daniel says, what is it? You said it's, the hatred is?
The hatred, well, we had these political groups and whatnot, and instead of finding some way to come to agreement among ourselves, we invited the Romans in to oppose our enemies for us. We invited the Syrians, we invited the Egyptians up to fight our battles historically.
Right, so this one you're saying that we were infighting, and not only were we that's shocking, right, that the Jews were like infighting. That's amazing. Meaning to say, there's never been like one way that the Jewish people have done anything. Like depending on where they lived and when they lived, we have beautiful sets of customs from all over that look really different, right? Can look really different. But they were fighting politically and for power in the city of Jerusalem, and they were kind of turning on each other, more than kind of turning on each other. They were turning on each other. And when they didn't have enough power to overthrow another one, Daniel said, well, they'll just reach out to someone really powerful, like,
Rome or Egypt?
yeah, let's bring in
Syria?
let's bring in whoever the big guns are, and then have them fight for us, and then they'll kick our enemies out, and then we'll be placed in. So we're in Sefer Yoma, right? We're in the Talmud's Masechet of Yoma. If you read the Mishnah in Yoma, it's a bit heartbreaking, because this idea, Daniel, of the infighting was taken to such extent that almost all the learned Kohanim were gone. They were almost all gone. So that they take the Kohen, because he has to go in, the Kohen Gadol has to go into the Holy of Holies. We tie the red string around his, is it red? We tie the string around his legs in case we got to get him out because nobody else can go in. And he's got to do the work perfectly. And if he doesn't do the work perfectly, we won't be forgiven for our sins. All kinds of calamities could fall upon us. And in the Mishnah in Yoma, that Kohen doesn't seem to know much at all. Like he has to be taken to the Besamim shop, the Ketoret Samim, the incense family, the people that made it for hundreds of years. They're not making it anymore because somebody overthrew them. They bring the animals before the Kohen and say, "This is a sheep." Like literally, this is what they do. Like and at some point it says that when they finish the training of the Kohen, the person training him turns. Hu poresh, he turns himself away, and the Kohen poresh, he turns his back to him, and they both just cry. Yom Kippur's coming, and this is what it's come to, right? And this is what it's come to. So, right, we have a kind of political infighting. This is about power. This isn't about mitzvahs anymore, right? This is about power. And so what does the Talmud end us with here? It says, So which one's worse? You can imagine the rabbis asking that, right? The first temple was because of these graven sins, these three. The second one was because of sinat chinam. And then it says what? Whatever. שקולה שנאת חינם כנגד 3 עבירות עבודה זרה גלויה עריות ושפיכת דמים. This is to teach us that this kind of groundless, baseless hatred is considered as grave, or maybe worse, than the 3 sins of idolatry, incest, and bloodshed. All right. So, we get no talk of Assyrians, of Nebuchadnezzar. We get no talk of any army, right? We get talk of some internal process, something that happened to our people where something at our core went off the path. We got misaligned. We lost our way. And we got lost our way in such a huge way that the cost was the temple, was the core of our people, right? That's what it was. All right, that's there. Any questions or comments or concerns?
Is it true that שנאת חינם is equal to עבודה זרה, גילוי עריות ושפיכות דמים? Is it true or not? Yeah, there's a question here. I'm not sure. You know.
Is
Seem
sinat
to be doing the experiment now
in America?
in America.
In America? Look,
Orca.
let's take the Cantor's question seriously, right? It's is sinat chinam a mitzvah?
No.
No, they were doing all the mitzvahs. The first time they weren't following the rules. They weren't doing the chukim and mishpatim. They weren't following the way of living set out by God in the Torah. They weren't doing that, and that's what led to this calamity. The second time, they're doing the mitzvahs. It says that they're doing all this stuff. They're studying Torah. They're doing the mitzvahs. They're doing acts of kindness, and they just hate each other in their hearts in such extent that they'll turn each other into governments, and they're just fighting and fighting and fighting, and it's right and makes a radical statement to say that that's equal to that, right? Or at least that's right. I might not think so. I might not think that just, you're doing the mitzvahs, it's okay. No, it's not okay. Like if you have hate in your heart at the end of the day, and maybe, I don't know, it's like what do you call those people? Like the Hatfields and McCoys or something that would just fight for hundreds of years and they don't even remember why they're fighting anymore. They just don't know that I hate you and you know that you hate me, and that's it, right? And if you get there, they're saying that's the same. That's the same of kind of, I don't know, what do you say? It's like a core brokenness. Something happened, breaks at the core, right? If you're not living within the, I don't know, the biggest of the mitzvot, and if you're kind of just stewing in hate, something breaks, right? Something breaks.
You might say that groundless hatred is like a spiritual ill.
So I appreciate you saying that. So you can say, if you want to say it again in there, they'll hear you over there. I think we heard you.
You could say that it's a spiritual ill, so maybe that you have your physical practices together, but your next level of practices, how they change your heart, is not there.
Right, and I don't know your name.
I don't remember, no, Lenny.
Lenny, I don't remember, it's my name sometimes. Lenny, for some of the folks, and I said I struggle with Tisha B'Av because I don't know that I want there to be a temple. I'm pretty sure I don't want there to be a temple. I'm pretty sure. There's a move that they do that say we're all building a mikdash inside of us all the time. And that if something gets spiritually corrupt at its core, if it becomes rotted, then there's nothing right? Then there's something so broken that it can go away. It can be destroyed. That's for sure, right? That's for sure. I think at least a lot of moderns get stuck, like to say, how do I mourn? Like the actual temple itself with all of the temple sacrifice, when I might not want that thing. And then typically what they're doing is moving it in to some metaphorical place, right? Metaphorical place to say, not that, but there was certain things in that, certain values in that, there were certain realities to that were beautiful, that those things we should cry for. And just senseless destruction as a whole, right? Like you don't have to want that exact place to mourn for the people that were destroyed in that. Let's look at the Talmud in Shabbat. Yes.
Wanted to say,
Yeah.
it seems to me, you look at this baseless hatred idea,
Mhm.
that it's the cause of the more written about or obvious sins in a way.
Right. They don't.
Idolatry, I'm not sure about adultery, but idolatry and bloodshed, they come from baseless hatred.
Right. So you're saying that if we want to try to connect those two, that this kind of core corruption, this baseless, groundless hatred, certainly can be a factor to lead me to not caring too much about the people around. I mean, to lead me to break some very core covenantal ideas, right? Core covenantal ideas. I think that's right. Let's look at this one, the Talmud in Shabbat 119b. Does anyone want to read that one? Any language of your choice? Yeah, go for it. There, she got it.
Rabbi said Jerusalem was destroyed only because they, its inhabitants, desecrated the Sabbath. Our
Rabbi Abahu.
Rabbi Abahu said Jerusalem was destroyed only because they stopped the reading of the Shema morning and evening. Rabbi Hamnuna said Jerusalem was destroyed only because they neglected the education of school children. Ulah said Jerusalem was destroyed only because they had no shame of sin one before the other. Rabbi Isaac said Jerusalem was destroyed only because the small and the great were made equal. Rabbi Amram, son of Rabbi Simeon,
Bar Abba, the son of Abba.
said in our Simeon Ba'Abba's name, in
Reb Hanina's name.
Hanina's name,
Welcome.
Jerusalem was destroyed only because they did not rebuke each other. Rab Judah said Jerusalem was destroyed only because they held scholars in contempt. There, Rabbah said, Jerusalem was destroyed only because there were no longer men of integrity there.
Okay. So let's talk about who's talking. So you see that it says Amar Abaye in the Hebrew. It says Amar is the first word. So if it says Amar, you know that these are later rabbis. These are not our Rishonim. These are some of our laters. Abaye is one of my favorites because he's never called Rabbi or Rebbe or anything. He's just called Abaye. And one of my teachers in my 5th year, I think, of rabbinical school showed us this dictionary from the Middle Ages and said, what are they going to call you in your synagogue? And then they had like all the words, and then it just had Abaye. Abaye just went by his name. He was fine, right? Abaye. So what does he say? It says, when it says Jerusalem was destroyed only because, is that like a double negative or something? What is it? Lo chavar Yerushalayim ele. It wasn't, all right, it was destroyed. It meant to say it was, right? It was because of this one big giant thing. It was destroyed because of the desecration of Shabbos. Yeah? Questions, comments? We're okay? All right, that one's all right, I guess.
And the thing is, each of them is claiming that his argument is the only argument.
Okay.
Which when you look at it, you probably should say all of the above. Why one said only because of this Shabbat and only because of that.
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't make much sense.
Well, amazing if we were to sit around and say, what are the ills destroying our city today? And you'll say, the biggest problem we have is that. And then Aaron would say, that? Of course it's not that, it's this. And then Sharon would say, of course, those ones are problematic, but the biggest problem, it's that. That's kind of what's going on, right? When they're saying.
What's the timing of this in terms of these rabbis?
So they're Amoraim.
Do they, they're,
They're-
and do they live
They never seen the temple. They've never walked near the temple. They're hundreds of years later. Most of them, yeah. These are all Amoraim. Yeah, yeah. They're, I mean, within a couple hundred years, it's not clear. I'd have to go look to be sure, so I don't want to say yes or no. But these are not.
They're not sitting around and discussing with one another. This is layer on layer on layer. Is that correct?
These ones actually could have been talking to each other, but most of the time in the Talmud, you're right. Some redactor has taken this one said, this one said, this one said, and shoved them into a paragraph, right? Yeah.
There's one in here that stands out.
Yeah. Which one stands out to you?
The one that says, only because the small and the great were made equal.
Yeah. What's that one?
That seems like it should be a good thing that the small and the great are made equal.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
should be a good thing.
So-
All the other things.
It should be, but what you're not seeing is that
Wait,
these are
what?
the ra- these
What?
are our
One?
rabbi- oh.
Just 1 second. Marshall says, just so let's make sure that we understand. Marshall says this one seems good, right? That the small and the great are made equal,
Right.
Defining small and great.
Yeah.
right? And that, yeah, go for it.
How am I defining small and great? I mean, anyone with, it could be more or less power. It could be more or less intelligent. It could be how those with more money are judged versus someone with less money. Any of those things.
All right.
Cheryl had the same reaction when we got to that verse. I could feel it coming off
Wait,
of
before
her.
you say that, I can't read the Hebrew because the print is too small. What are they?
I
what
wonder
is
why I
what
made
is
it so
in the
small.
Gemara?
It
What's
says,
the Gemara say?
לא חרבה ירושלים אלא בשביל שהישבו קטן וגדול.
All right, so
Like
it's
they-
Katan v'Gadol.
right?
Okay,
Right?
all right.
But these are
Now you're going to
these.
show me some baseless hatred now.
No,
Yeah,
I'm
here
not-
we
no,
go.
I'm not gonna show you the
He's
baseless
going to say,
hatred.
that's not the right reason. It's not the one you like.
Exactly. This is only because.
Yes.
No, what we're talking, the folks who are sitting around the table talking here are sages and scholars of blessed memory. These are people who talk about great and small in terms of learning, specifically learning Torah, learning Talmud. And so Jerusalem was destroyed only because the small were as disregarded as the great in learning. I think that's the subtext there.
So say that in English.
There-
Sometimes when we read anything, any of our texts, we have to say it in English and then say it in English, like in regular English, which means to say, put it in a modern context. Like, what would that look like?
That would mean that that Jerusalem was destroyed because the great teachers were given no more respect than a fool on the corner selling something.
I thought you were going to go much saucier than that, like you had, like, right? But you
No,
know,
but the rabbis would have.
but you know what I mean? So if one wanted to, they could say, you know, we stopped listening to the CDC and started listening to some guy on some news channel that I never heard about. Or they could have, but they wouldn't have said it with the CDC. They would have said it with the core text of our, what holds our people together, based in morals, values, and ethics. Like, how do we care and love for each other, get close to God? And you have somebody that knows nothing saying something, and somebody that's been studying their whole life saying something, and those are equal.
Yeah,
They're seen equal.
yeah.
Right? That's messed up.
Both sides of the
That's
story.
what I said. I said, I paid $100,000 for this degree. I'm just kidding, right? But you know what I mean? But that's kind of where they're going to go. But I do think we have to unpack it, because if it meant something else, like we went beyond material possessions and treated everyone equally, right? Everyone was seen equal before the law. We would say, yeah, that's good, right? That's good, right? That is a mitzvah, which we're not supposed to. It goes so far in our text, right, Trevor, to say that you shouldn't show any favor to the poor, right? Like the one that you just rule on their side because they really need it. No, you can't do that, right? You can't do that. All right, how about this one that says, Sharon, did you like the one that says, because we didn't educate our children? Yeah, I was thinking about you. It says, Abahu says that we stopped reading Shema in the morning and the evening. And then the whole thing was destroyed because we didn't say 6 words.
The Mishnah starts with, when do you say the Shema in the evening? So maybe this goes back to kind of they know that this is how the whole Mishnah started, and so you have to start talking about when you read the Shema, and if you stop doing it, then you're going back to the core of what what the Tanaim and the Amoraim were all about.
Yeah, so the very first page, page 2, all our pages are page 2, the first page. Right, they're all bet. They start, Marshall, you're 100% correct. What time do you say Shema in the evening? What it doesn't do, by the way, which I love, is it doesn't say, why do I even have to say Shema in the evening? Which you'll have a hard time showing me in the Torah where it tells me I have to say Shema in the evening, right? But they've now commanded. This is how it works. And so maybe they're saying that. So if you're putting it into more of a kind of bigger thought bubble, you would say they're rejecting the basics from the beginning, right? This is how it all starts. And if you can't do that one, then something else would break. What about tochacha? What about the one that says you didn't rebuke each other? What is that? What is rebuke?
It's a friendly, a person who is a really caring friend will help you to
That's okay.
identify those things that you can do better. That's a kind of an American way to say that.
It was nice, yeah. I liked it a lot. I mean, the Torah in Leviticus says, "Hochiach tochiach et amitecha." It says, "You shall rebukingly rebuke your amit, your friend." Right? That means if you see me and I'm not doing some mitzvah right, then you should come to me and say, "Hey, buddy, you're not doing that mitzvah right." That's what you should do. Anybody have relatives like that? I got a few. Have no problems walking up and saying, "You're doing it wrong," right? Just like that. This one is really interesting because our later commentators say, and use, what did you say, a kind friend? What did you say? A friendly friend? A caring friend, you said, a caring friend. That's an interesting choice of words because some of the later commentators say that, what's it like? What is it like if we live together and everybody's rebuking everybody? Because we're people, right? We're human, so we're not going to be perfect at it. So what does it mean that every time that you didn't do it, somebody would say, "Hey, you buddy, you're not doing it right"? It might be nice. It might not be very nice to live like that. So our later commentators say, if I want to give tochacha properly, in a godly way, then I need to ask myself some questions. I need to say, what's this about? Like, where does it come from in me? Does it come from a place of love, a caring friend, or does it come from a place of like one-upsmanship? Is that a word? Does it come from a place of I'm better than you, or aha, or I told you so, or I knew I'd catch you, or anything that's not from a place of love? Then keep your mouth shut. Like if it's coming from love, that's the first step. Then a caring friend can come forward to say, "Hey, I'm noticing something." The second thing they say is, can the person hear it? Like no matter how good your intentions are, if your friend can't hear it, and it's just going to blow up everything, you might wait, or you might figure out another way to do it, right? So when it says that these people aren't rebuking each other, so for me at least, it stirs up some imagery and some feelings of the caring piece. Not that they weren't saying, "Hey, you're doing it wrong," but they might have been doing a lot of that from a very unhealthy place, a less caring place. And then that creates a society where it's very difficult to trust anyone, take risks, right? It's very difficult to step into any place where one might be uncomfortable.
What if it could mean that they weren't doing it at all? And so because of people weren't doing things right, it just sort of fell apart into a bit of chaos and couldn't survive that way.
So play it out for us, like go a little farther. So
So,
let's imagine it. Let's imagine the world where nobody holds anybody accountable.
Well,
Right.
everybody gets a participant ribbon, and there's no accountability. You do what you want, when you want, with no regard to the law or feelings or anything, and the world is just chaos.
Or who gets hurt.
Or, yeah, with no concern about who gets hurt, who may be killed.
What do you think?
I agree. I think it's sort of like not necessarily it's every man for himself, but it's the idea of, right? You're not rebuking each other. Is this thing on? I don't know.
I don't know.
But the idea here is, like, you're not going to correct somebody. Everybody just does whatever. Like, Shabbat, desecrate it, whatever. It's just all out in the open, and nobody cares. It's like, but basically a violation of, like, all these mitzvot. Like, if you're never going to say anything at any point to anything, like, you know, your bacon cheeseburger, then what are we even doing here?
What are we even doing here?
Good question.
It's like hard in American culture where there's this fierce independence where no one's supposed to tell you anything to do ever, right? Except I studied with an educator named Sid Schwartz who asked rabbis to stand for things. Like, you actually have to draw some lines and say, these ones are less good, and you need to be able to preach towards those ones. You have to actually say this is better and tell people, like, you know, you should be able to say, like, investing in education is good and you should be doing it, right? You should be able to say, like, you should have some sentences you can actually say. And I can't tell you how many of my colleagues had a hard time with that. Like, well, I can share this or that, I can do whatever, but, you know, ultimately they're going to do what of course they're going to do what they want, right? But do you stand for, like, is there a line where you say, no, here, like, right? And can you voice it? And right, so I hear what you're saying. I think there's a way that it all goes to, like, it becomes meaningless, like, if we're not holding up to anything. So, like, you see these rabbis that come hundreds of years later and are trying to imagine what was so bad that the temples were destroyed. Nobody says the Assyrians, right? Nobody says the Romans. They don't say this is a geopolitical issue that happens because, I mean, that's what it was. I mean, I studied history. I have 2 degrees in history. That's what it was. But our rabbis just refused to say that that's at least only what it was, right? There was something bigger going on. So can you just turn the page and to Rabbi Lew? Does anybody know Rabbi Lew? Rabbi Alan Lew, Zichrono Livracha? Anybody read any of his stuff? You know of him? He was from San Francisco. Rabbi Lew was the first one really that kind of tied Eastern tradition in with Jewish tradition. So he took Psukei de Zimra really seriously, and like where it said that our pious ones came an hour before services to get themselves in the mood, and he did all kinds of Jewish meditation, and he's a really beautiful soul and a beautiful writer. He left the world probably a dozen years ago or something now. It's something like that. He was actually in a rabbinic retreat, and he was out for a walk in the woods, and then we couldn't find him. And he passed away in the woods. Like, in some way, it's beautifully ironic, right? Like, it's, and terrible, all of it at the same time. But he wrote this book called This Is Real and You're Completely Unprepared. So if you've not looked at that book, this is his book about the journey from now, from Tisha B'Av, through the High Holy Days. And he asks us to really take ownership. And I think that's what the rabbis were doing in the Talmud too, to say take ownership. It's not because of some outside armies, but it's something in us that we actually have control. So let's see what he says. So he says, so what were the rabbis of the Talmud talking about when they said the temple was destroyed because of gratuitous hatred? What was Moses talking about, and why did he blame the people for what happened when the objective evidence of history clearly seems to exonerate them? That's what we looked at today in Shul. The answer is that neither the rabbis nor Moshe cared a fig about history. A fig, he didn't care a fig about history. By the way, all of our Hasidim, all of our beautiful mystical teachings, they don't give a fig about history. They never say that history wasn't right. They're just not interested. They're interested in like your spiritual DNA, and that's what they want to talk about, right? But he says they don't care. They don't care a fig about history. They weren't historians. They were spiritual leaders. And spiritually, the only question worth asking about any conflict, any recurring catastrophe is this: what is my responsibility for it? How am I complicit in it? How can I prevent it from happening again? So what is my responsibility for it? How am I complicit in it? How can I prevent it from happening again? I think those questions stand up to any conflict and reoccurring catastrophe. So when things go bad, there's an enormous temptation to blame it on externals, on the evil of others, or on unlucky turn of events. Spiritually, however, we're called to resist this temptation, no matter how strong it may be, or no matter how strongly rooted in fact or reason or history it may seem. Our power in this world is considerable, but also very circumscribed. It is only here and now, in this moment, in this place, in this present, that we can act. We can't act in the past, we can't act in the future, and we most certainly cannot act through someone else's experience. So from a spiritual point of view, we need to ask, what can I do here and now in the present reality of my own experience? One of my teachers says that we should ask ourselves, to what challenge, or maybe to what prayer that somebody, someplace has in the world, is my life the answer to that dilemma or to that prayer. Right? So he says Tisha B'Av is the day on which we are reminded of the calamity that keeps repeating itself in the life of our people. And against all reason, against the overwhelming evidence of history, Moses and the rabbis insist that they are not powerless in the face of calamity. Moses and the rabbis insist that we take responsibility for what is happening to us. And Moses and the rabbis insist that we acknowledge our complicity in the things that keep happening to us over and over and over again. So Tisha B'Av is the beginning of tshuva, of return or realignment. The process of turning that we hope to complete on Yom Kippur, the process of returning to ourselves and to God, and the acknowledgement of the unresolved in our lives as a people and as individuals, in the beginning of the sacred power of the days of all, grant us to transform our lives in this moment when we feel the pull of both the waning moon, the setting sun, in this place, in this life, here and now. Can someone say like a one-sentence English? What is he saying? Why do the rabbis turn to, why don't they go to history?
Because if you just go to history, then it has no spiritual value to you. If you think you have to look at it and say, Tisha B'Av, it's about me. It's not about the past.
Right. So spiritually, right, it's not that the history is wrong, it's not that it's insignificant, not that it didn't happen, they just don't bother. Like the question that's going to change my life, change my living room, change my neighborhood, right, is one that has to start in me. It has to start inside of me and say, I'm always moved every time I read him when he says, what's my responsibility, how am I complicit, and how can I prevent it? Like if we tackled challenges like that versus saying it's her fault, their fault, this fault, but that, 12 years ago they passed a law and up to Texas, like this is what we do, right? We don't start in this place. And I don't know if it's practical to start in this place always in a big political arena, but in the life of a person, in the life of a spirit, right, he says this is where we have to start. And all the work up to Yom Kippur starts with sitting in this place. Like where have we fallen short again and again? And we're not powerless. We can face it. We can look right at it. We can lean into it. And we can make some change. We actually have some power to do that. Yeah. Any last comments or questions?
I guess
Yeah.
maybe that answers
Yeah, right? Because that, they could control. Like, is our hearts in the right place? Is our worship right? Is our intention good? Are we looking for our neighbors? Am I living out of, is my being like pouring out from a center of goodness, wholeness, and love? Right? What am I doing? That stuff is in my control. It's hard to make changes, I know, but it's possible. They refuse to say that it's not possible. And they refuse to say it's that external thing that I have no power over, right? They know history. They just don't worry about it when it comes to your soul. They're not as interested. So thank you, Lenny. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. What are we going to do?
We can do one more song, or we can go to Marif.
I think we can, you want to sing a song and then we'll do Marif? Yeah, let's do that. Oh, it's falling. It's something. I don't know.
Okay, so we sang before Mima Makim. Now we are going to sing Min HaMeitzar, which is more or less the same. Meitzar, from the word tsar, means narrow. Min HaMeitzar, Karatia, from this Meitzar I called upon you, Hashem, Anani B'Merchavia, and he answered me in the godly space, Merchavia. And then the second line, Adonai li loira. If I turn to God totally, I should have I know no fear. Because if this is the state when I'm kind of fully into God, then what a man can do to me? Maya Seli Adam. So it goes like this. Min HaMeitzar karati chaya, anani b'merchavya. Min HaMeitzar karati chaya, anani b'merchavya. So again. Min HaMeitzar karati chaya, anani b'merchavya. Min HaMeitzar karati chaya, anani b'merchavya. Adonai li loira, ma yaseh li adam. Adonai li loira, ma yaseh li adam. Min HaMeitzar karati chaya, anani b'merchavya. Min HaMeitzar karati chaya, anani b'merchavya. Adonai li velo ira, ma yaseh li adam. Adonai li velo ira, ma yaseh li adam. Ay, ratay. Ay, first song was by Joey Weisenberg, and the second one that we just did was actually by Deborah Sachs-Mintz, who he's sort of a buddy associate and co-musicians, and
She
so
worked for me at BCI for 2
She
summers.
was in New Orleans.
Yeah.
yeah, she used to live in New Orleans, yeah. And she is, she became very close to Joey, and they, in all his recordings, she has the main solo part. She has a gorgeous voice. But she's also writing now. She has a CD of her own, and this is from her. Yeah. Okay, maybe we can get up as we daven. So.
Excellent.
Oh, yes.
Everybody stretch.
Good.
Stretch. Mari starts on page 3.
On page 3.
Yes? No, we got it.
ברוך המבדיל בין קודש לחול, ורחום יכפר עוון ולא ישחית, וירבה לשיבה פה ולא ייכור לחמתו, אדוני הושיע המלך יענן ביום קוראנו.
Do we have 10? We have not 10.
So we cannot say ברוך. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהים מלך העולם אשר בדברו מערבים בחוכמה פותח שערים ובדבונם משנה עתים. ומעביר יום ולילה מבדיל בין יום ולילה אדוני צבאות שמו אל חי וקיים תמיד מלכלנו לעולם ועד ברוך אתה אדוני המערים הערבים אהבת עולם את ישראל אתה ותרת עולם נשפט כמשפטים אותנו לימדת כי הם חיינו ורוח ימינו והם נגע יומם ולילה ועבדך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד אהבת אדוני אלוהיכם אמת ואמונה כל זו וקם עלינו. 8-9 ומלכותו ברצון קיבל להם משה ונישראל חנו שירה בשמחה רבה ועמדו כולם מי כמוך באלים אדוני מי כמוך נדר בקודש נוראתי לא תוסף אל מלכותך רבניך בקיים לפני משה זה ליאנו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד ונאמר כפדרנו את יעקב וגלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני ועל ישראל אשכיבנו אדוני לשלום פרסנו סוכת שלומך שלום אתה בעולם
ושמוצאתנו בין לחיים לשלום אתה ועד עולם, ברוך אתה אדוני, שומר עמו ישראל לעם. ברוך אדוני לעולם, אמן ואמן, ברוך אדוני זכרנו שלום הללויה. ברוך כבודו לעולם ונקודות כל הארץ, אמן ואמן, יהי כבודו לעולם, ישמח אדוני במעשיו, ישמענו ורחמתה ועד עולם. Page 15. כי המלכות שלך הוא לעולמי עד תמלוך בכבוד, כי אין לנו מלך אלא אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני, המלך בכבודו, תמיד ימחלנו לעולם ועד, ועל כל מעשו. עמידה, on page 17.
Testing.
Some traditions, you make the room almost black, dark, and you light a candle. Burn down the room. That would be a good way to start for me.
I could go turn some
For your
lights
sake,
off.
I'll refrain from burning down the show.
Thanks.
Do you want me to turn some lights off?
And
Well, I
no,
think we're
no, no,
gonna need some
no.
light,
We need to light to read.
but if you need some extra light, then
Well, I mean, Marshall solved the problem with the
Okay.
magic tool.
you got it on that
I can make it.
any size you want. That's true. Oh, that's the good Torah app. I like that one.
Just remember your microphone when it's time to read too.
Or you can sit right there next to Jonathan if you want.
Let's get over here and block the wind for you.
I don't feel, actually, I don't feel any on me.
You can sit over there.
So you want to sit here?
This concerns me that it doesn't stay in there very well.
Just kind of shift the microphone back and forth. Not that will work.
You know the Debbie Friedman guy?
Yes, please.
A friend of mine was at a klezmer festival in Krakow. And at
Wow.
the last minute, they arranged to do Havdalah on Motzei Shabbat. And there was a lot of different kind of rabbis and clergy and cantors from all over the world. And for whatever reasons, they decided no women could go up, only the men could go up to do Havdalah. And then the Chabad rabbi of Krakow got up and sang a niggun and said, "Yai, yai, bo, 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 bo." Brought Debbie Friedman right onto the.
That's awesome.
Are we sitting low as part of a tradition?
So sitting low is
It's
our
like Shiva.
Oren tradition, as we think about the destruction of the cities. All the same rules as Yom Kippur, whether bathing in intimacy.
These are almost like Shiva chairs.
They are meant to be something like a Shiva chair. You can take your shoes off in this service if you want. Our book rank is 35. That's all right. That one doesn't want to be
Okay, Eicha, page 35, chapter Aleph, chapter 1.
איכה ישבה ודד, העיר רבת ים, הייתה כאלמנה, רבתי בגויים, שרתי במדינות, הייתה למס. בכה תבכה בלילה, ודמעתה לחיה, אין לה מנחם מכל אוהביה, כל רעיה בגדובה, היו לה לאויבים. גלתה יהודה מעוני ומרוב עבודה, היא ישבה בגויים, לא מצאה מנוח, כל רודפיה השיגוה בין המצרים. דרכי ציון אבלות, מבלי בהם מועד, כל שעריה שוממים, כהניה נאנחים, בתולותיה נוגות והימר לה. היו צריה לראש אויביה שלו, כי אדוני הוגה רב פשעיה, עולליה, הלכו שבי לפני צר. ויצא מבת ציון כל הדרה, היו שריה, כאיילים לא מצאו מרעה, וילכו ולא כוח לפני רודף. זכרה ירושלים, ימי עניה מרודיה, כל מחמודיה, אשר היו מימי קדם, בנפול עמה ביד צר, אין עוזר לה, ראו הצרים, שחקו על משפטיה. חטא חטא ירושלים, על כן לנידה הייתה. כל מכבדיה הזילוה, כי ראו ערוותה. גם היא ננחה ותשב אחור. טומאתה בשוליה, לא זכרה אחריתה, ותרד פלאים, אין מנחם לה. ראה אדוני את עני, כי הגדיל אויב. ידו פרש שר, על כל מחמדיה, כי ראתה גויים באו מקדשה, אשר ציוויתה, לא יבואו בקהלך. כל המננחים מבקשים לחם, נתנו מחמודיהם, באוכל להשיב נפש. ראה אדוני והביטה, כי הייתי זוללה. לא עליכם כל עוברי דרך, הביטו וראו, אם יש מחוב כמחובי, אשר עולה לי, אשר הוג אדוני ביום חרון אפו. ממרום שלח אש בעצמותי וירדנה, פרש רשת לרגלי, השיבני אחור, נתנני שוממה, כל היום דבה, נשקד על פשעי בידו. יסתרגו, עלו על צווארי, הכשיל כוחי, נתנני אדוני בידי לא חלקום. Sila kol abirai Adonai bekirbi, kara alai, moed lishbor bachurai, kat darach Adonai, liv tulat bat Yehuda. Al ele ani vochia, eini yardei mayim, כי רחק ממני, מנחם משיב נפשי. היו בני שוממים, כי גבר אויב. פרשת ציון בידיך, אין מנחם לה, ציווה אדוני, ליעקב סביביו צריו. הייתה ירושלים לנידה ביניהם. צדיקו אדוני כי פיחו מהריתי. שימונה כל העמים, וראו מחובי, בתולותי ובחורי הלכו בשבי. קראתי למאהבי, המה רימוני, כהני וזקני בעיר גבהו. כי ביקשו אוכל לעמו, וישיבו את נפשם. ראה אדוני כי צר לי, מאי חמרמרו, נפח ליבי בקרבי, כי מרו מהריתי, מחוץ שקלה חרב, בבית כמוות. שימו כי נאנחה אני, אין מנחם לי, כל אויבי שמעו, ראיתי ששו, כי אתה עשיתי, הבאת יום קראת ויוחמוני. תבוא קוראתם לפניך, ועולל עמו, כאשר עוללת לי על פשעי, כי רבות אנחותי וליבי דווי.
Chapter 2, bet on page 37. איכה יאיר ואפו אדוני את בת ציון, השליך משמיים ארץ תפארת ישראל, ולא זכר אדום רגליו ביום אפו. בילה אדוני לא חמל, את כל נאות יעקב הרס, בעברתו מבצרי בת יהודה הגיע לארץ, חילל ממלכה ושריה, בגדיו וחרייו. כל קרן ישראל השיבו אחור ימינו מפני אויב. ויברא יעקב כאש להבה אוכלה סביב. דרך קשתו כאויב, ניצב ימינו קצר, ויהרוג כל מחמדי עין. באוהל בציון שפך כאש חמתו. היה אדוני כאויב בילה ישראל, בילה כל ארמנותיה, שיחת מבצריו. וירא בבת יהודה תעניה ועניה. ויחמוס כגן סוכו, שיחת מועדו. שיקח אדוני בציון מועד ושבת, וינעץ בזעם אפו מלך וכהן. זנח אדוני מזבחו, ניער מקדשו, הסגיר ביד אדוני חומות ארמנותיה. כל נתנו בבית אדוני כיום מועד. חשב אדוני להשחית חומת בציון, נטע הקו לא השיב ידו מבליה. ויאב אל חיל וחומה יחדיו אומללו. טבעו בארץ שעריה, איבד ושיבר בריחיה. מלכה ושריה וגויים אין תורה, גם נביאיה לא מצאו חזון מאדוני. ישבו לארץ ידמו זקני בציון, העלו עפר על ראשם, חגרו שקים. הורידו לארץ ראשן בתולות ירושלים. כלו בדמעות עינייך מרמרו מאי, נשפך לארץ כבדי על שבר בת עמי. בעטף עולל ויונק ברחובות קריה, לימותם יאמרו איה דגן ויין. בהתעטפם כחלל ברחובות העיר, בהשתפך נפשם אל חקי מותם. מה עידך, מה עד מלך, הבת ירושלים, מה אשבה לך ואנחמך בתולת בציון. כי גדול קיים שברך מרפלך, נביאייך חזו לך שב ותפל, ולא גילו על עוונך להשיב שבותך. ויחזו לך מסעות שווא ומדוכם, ספקו עלייך כפיים כל עוברי דרך, שרקו ויניעו ראשם על בת ירושלים. הזאת העיר שיאמרו כלילת יופי, משוש לכל הארץ. פצעו עלייך פיהם כל אויבייך, שרקו ויחרוק שהם אמרו בלענו. אך זה היום שקיווינו, מצאנו ראינו. עשה אדוני אשר זמם, ביצע אמרתו אשר ציווה מימי קדם, ארס ולא חמל. וישמח עלייך אויב, הרים קרן צריך. צעק ליבם אל אדוני, חומה בציון, הורידי כנחל דמעה יומם ולילה, אל תתני פוגת לך, אל תדום בת עינך. קומי רומי וליל, לראש השמורות, שפכי כמים ליבך, נוכח פני אדוני. שאי אלי כפייך, על נפש עולרייך, עטופים ברעב וראש כל חוצות. ראה אדוני והביטה, למי עולל תקו. אם תאכלנה נשים פריים עוללי טיפוחים, אם יהרג במקדש אדוני כהן ונביא. שכבו לארץ וחוצות נער וזקן, בתולותי ובחורי נפלו בחרב. הרגת ביום אפך, טבחת ולא חמלת, תקרא כיום מועד מגורי מסביב, לא היה ביום אף אדוני פליט ושריד, אשר טיפחתי ורביתי, אויבי כלם. I guess because there's no volunteers to read chapters, right? I do the next one. Chapter 3, page 41. אני הגבר העני בשבט עברתו, אותי נהג ויולך חושר לאור, אך בי ישוב ויהפוך ידו כל היום, בילה בשרי ואורי שיבר עצמותיי. בנה עלי ויקף ראש תלאה, לא מחשקים הושיבנו כמתי עולם, גדר בדי ולא אצער בתנחושתי, גם כן אזעק ואשבע שטן תפילתי, גדר דרכי בגזית נתיבותי היווה, דוב עורב הוא לי אריה במסתרים, דרכי שורר ויפסחני שמני שומם, דרך קשתו ויציבני כמטרה לחץ. הביא בכליותי בני אשפתו, הייתי שחוק לכל עמי נגינתם כל היום. השביעני במרורים מלבני לענה, ויגרס בחצץ שיניי, הכפישני באפר, ותזנח משלום נפשי נשיתי טובה, ואומר עבד נצחי ותאכלתי מאדוני. זכורני ומרודי לענווה ראש, זכור תזכור ותשוח עלי נפשי, זאת אשיב אל ליבי על כן אוכיל. חסדי אדוני כי לא תמנו, כי לא חלו רחמיו. חדשים לבקרים רבה אמונתך. חלקי אדוני אמרה נפשי, על כן אוכיל לו. טוב אדוני לקובב, לנפש תדרשנו. טוב ויכיל ודומה לתשועת אדוני. טוב לגבר כי שאול מנעוריו. ישב בדר וידום כי נטל עליו. ייתן בעפר פיהו אולי יש תקווה. ייתן למכהו לכיס בה בחרפה. כי לא יזנח לעולם אדוני. כי אם הוגה וריחם כרוב חסדיו. כי לא ינם מליבו ויגע אין בני איש. לדכא תחת רגליו כל אסירי ארץ. להטות משפט גבר נגד פני עליון. לעוות אדם בריבו אדוני לא ראה. מזה אמר ותהי אדוני לא ציווה. מפי עליון לא תצא הרעות והטוב. מה יתאונן אדם חי גבר על חטאיו. נחפשה דרכינו ונחקורה ונשובה עד אדוני. נישא לבבינו אל כפיים אל בשמיים. אנחנו פשענו ומרינו אתה לא סלחת. שקותה ואהבה תרדפנו הרגת לא חמרת. שקותה וענן לך מאבות תפילה. שכי ומעוז תשימנו בקרב העמים. פצעו עלינו פיהם כל אויבינו. פחד ופחד היה לנו הסד והשבר. פלגי מים תרדייני על שבר בת עמי. איני נגרע ולא תדמה מעין הפוגות. עד ישקיף וירא אדוני משמיים. איני עוללה לנפשי מכל בנות עירי. צדוני כציפור, צדוני כציפור, אויבי חינם. צמתו בבור חיי וידו אבן בי. צפו מים על ראשי, אמרתי נגזרתי. קראתי שמך שמך אדוני מבור תחתיות. קולי שמעת. אל תעלם אוזנך לרווחתי לשבעתי. קרבת ביום אקראך אמרת אל תירא. רבת אדוני נפשי גאלת חיי. ראית אדוני אהבתי שפטה משפטי. ראית כל נקמתם כל מחשבותם לי. שמעת חרפתם אדוני כל מחשבותם עלי. שפתי קמי והגיונם עלי כל היום. שבטם וקימתם אהבית אני מנגינתם. תשיר להם גמול אדוני כמעשה ידיהם. תיתן להם מגינת לב תעלתך להם. תרדוף באף ותשמידם מתחת שמי אדוני. chapter 4, page 43.
Cantor, can any of it be done in English?
No. Because Rabbi might have a better idea, but I think the melody is a big part of it. I mean, if we can, in English it should be just read and not chanted. Rabbi?
Take some work to put some trouble on the English.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah. חיום זהב ישנא קדמתו, תשפכנה אבני קודש בראש כל חוצות. בני ציון היקרים, המסולאים בהפז. היכן נחשבו לנבלי חרס, מעשה ידי יוצר. גם את עניים חלצו שד העניקו גוריהן, בת עמי לאכזר, כי קיינים במדבר. דבק לשון יונק, אל חיכו בצמא. עוללים שאלו לחם, פורס אין להם. האוכלים למעדנים נשמו בחוצות. האמונים עלי תולה חיבקו אשפתות. ויגדל עוון בת עמי מחטאת סדום. הפוכה כמו רגל אוכלו בה ידיים. זכו נזיריה משלג, צחו מחלב, אדמו עצם מפנינים, ספיר גזרתם. חסך משחור תורם, לא נקרו בחוצות, צפה דורם על עצמם, יבש היה חעת. טובים היו חללי חרב, מחללי רעב, שהם יעזובו מדוכרים, מתנובות צעדי. ידי נשים רחמניות בישלו ילדיהם. היו לברות לעמו בשבר בת עמי. כי לאדוני את חמתו שפך אחרון אפו. ויצד אש בציון ותאכל יסודותיה. לא האמינו מלכי ארץ וכל יושבי תבל. כי יבוא צר ואויב בשערי ירושלים. בחטות נביאיה, עוונות כהניה, השופכים בקרבה דם צדיקים. נעו עברים בחוצות, נגאלו באדם, ולא יוכלו יגעו בלבושיהם. סורו טמא, קראו למו, סורו אל תיגעו, כי נעצו גם נעו. אמרו הגויים, לא יוסיפו לגור. פני אדוני חירקם, ולא יוסיף להמיתם. פני כהנים לא נשאו, זקנים ולא חננו. עודנו תכלנה עינינו אל עזרתנו הבל. בציפייתנו ציפינו אל גוי לא יושיע. צעדו צעדינו מלכת ברחובותינו. קרב קיצנו מלאו ימינו כי בקיצנו. קלים היו רודפינו מנשרי שמיים. על ההרים דולקונו, במדבר ערבו לנו. רוח אפינו משיח אדוני, נלכד בשחיתותם. אשר אמרנו בצילו, יחיה בגויים. סיסי ושמחי בת אדום, יושבת בארץ רות. גם עלייך תעבור כוס, תשכרי ותתוארי. תם עוונך בציון, ולא יוסיף להגלותך. פקד עוונך בת אדום, גילה על חטאותייך.
זכור אדוני מה היה לנו, הביטה עורר את חרפתנו, נחלתנו נהפכה לזרים, בתינו לנחרים. יתומים היינו בעיניו, אמותינו כאלמנות. מימינו בכסף שתינו, עצנו במחיר יבואו. על צווארנו נרדפנו, יגענו ולא הונח לנו. מצרים נתנו יד, אשור לשפוע לכם. אבותינו חטאו ואינם, ואנחנו עוונותיהם סבלנו. עבדים משלו בנו, פורק אין מידם. בנפשנו נביא לחמנו, מפני חרב המדבר. אורנו כתנור נחמרו, מפני זלעפות רעב. נשים בציון הינו, בתולות בהרי יהודה. שרים בידם נתלו, פני זקנים ולא נדרו. בחורים תכון נשלו, ונערים בעץ כשלו. זקנים משער שבתו, בחורים מגינתם. שבת משוש ליבנו, נהפך לכל מחולנו. נפלה עטרת ראשנו, אוי נא לנו כי חטאנו. על זה היה דווה ליבנו, על אלה חשכו עינינו. על הר ציון ששמם, שועלים הילכו בו. אתה אדוני לעולם תשב, כיסאך לדור ודור. למה לנצח תשכחנו, תעזבנו לאורך ימים. השיבנו אדוני אליך ונשובה, חדש ימינו כקדם. כי מעוז מאסתנו, קצבת עלינו עד מאוד. השיבנו אדוני אליך ונשובה, חדש ימינו כקדם.
Service, I believe, with not קדיש שלהם,
Yeah.
but עלינו.
Yeah, we don't.
Yep.
ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ועומדים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ותורתך אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד. ושמו
That's the end.
So one of friends of mine in New York sent out a little thing that said if the temple was destroyed because of Sinat Chinam, basis hatred, maybe it can be rebuilt with Ahavat Chinam. That whenever possible, we can love from no reason whatsoever. Maybe that can build some stuff up.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you for being here.
But that was waiting for me to explain
Someone in the room had to know that. Yeah. I think I studied that before, and it hit me the same way the first time.
Found them.
So I didn't catch the beginning of this.
Thank you, Alexi.
We were.
Oh, there, I'll get them.
This section here talking about Shabbat. Each of the rabbis said that for this reason and this reason alone, Jerusalem was destroyed. And there was one verse out there that to a modern American English perception seems shocking. And that was, Rabbi Isaac said Jerusalem was destroyed only because the small
Right,
and the
that's what
great
we're
were
talking
made
about.
equal.
Right. You had a
And
good point there.
it's in the context of
Like the
rabbis
rabbi's like,
talking around the
nobody
table.
cares,
online.
who cares about Torah?
Yeah, yeah. And that was,
And there the small is completely unlearned.
yeah, exactly.
Like,
Rather
knows
than,
absolutely nothing. And
right.
like, oh, well, that's the way. I guess that's the way it is.
noticed
That's
me
the reaction.
somehow sending out this energy that
Yeah.
I was objecting, but I told him I knew somebody was going to explain it in a satisfactory way, and they did. They did.
Always another one that gets left behind.
Hiding somewhere.
problem, you're very welcome.
Thank you for bringing the plate to.
You should tell me before.
Yeah,
You want,
I
you
thought-
want a burn it place? Sure.
Yeah, I'm like, why not? It'll be a good first week. I thought we had electric candles. Sharon talked to me about electric candles. And then she brought real candles. You know, you never know. Yep, until you know. Yep. I just called to say I love you. Tomorrow morning online. What are they diving from online?
Tomorrow morning you go online,
Yeah, but I don't know what Siddur they diving from.
and is this place gonna be just for